everyone, I'm Eric. Welcome back to another episode of the SDR Game podcast. Today my guest is Jill Bruno, Manager of Sales Development at RocketReach. Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited, especially since this is an SDR specific podcast. I'm very excited to participate today.
Before we dive into the episode, can you start with letting us know what you do at RocketReach? For example, how big is your team? Are you focusing on inbound, outbound?
Yeah, so yes, I work at RocketReach. We are a contact data provider. So I have an SDR team. All in, I have 8 reps, but 3 of them are focused solely on marketing inbound volume. So we get a lot of form fills, so that's that high interest. So they are a very aggressive, reactive team to the inbound leads that come in. But then I also have 5 outbound reps where they are tackling what we're calling our low hanging fruit as far as our free users are doing the cold calls or going outbound, and that's their full dedicated space is just finding new customers that are not driven by marketing efforts. So yeah, it's really exciting, and I'm excited to talk about that along the way because that's not probably the answer I would have had about a year ago, but now we're in a really good place for how I have my team situated.
Are you focusing on a specific segment with them, or they can go after any type of company?
For the outbound, what we're actually doing is we're going after a lot of the signups that come our way, but they're not paying us anything. So what we do is we categorize it by our ICP, certain volume of lookups. So I don't have any specialization just yet. And what's exciting for RocketReach in our future is that project's only going to grow and grow. We're really only on phase 1. So that's the segment they're going after. But to further answer your question, we don't segment by anything more detailed because what I love most about my product is it's very simple. Like I said, we're a contact data provider. You go in, you look for your individuals, the companies, and you get their phone, email, org information, and you know, it's not one of those crazy, software companies that's so complex that it needs to be segmented out. I'm fortunate my reps can really just handle whatever comes in their way.
And do you have any size specific for those companies or whatever?
Of course, the bigger the better, but we have some customers that are just, a one-man shop. They're an agency where, it's primarily sales, marketing, and recruitment. So one person, they could go through, you know, 1,000 lookups per day. That's what we call them internally, but they might need 1,000 contacts per day, and that's fine. Whereas we have some where, we have hundreds and hundreds of team members. So it really is, we can cater to anybody. And what I love most is, like I said, it's sales, marketing, and recruitment. So we are more department based rather than industry based because for the most part, every single company will have those departments. If not, they're going to be outsourced, and that's where we can work with those agencies.
How do you manage your week as a leader?
Oh, geez. So I'm going to give you my honest truth. It's probably not the best answer because I have it. This is one of my areas of improvement. So I do like to live by my calendar, and I do my best to put my team first, but there's a lot of meetings that come into play. So I really just try to schedule out whatever I have going on. So even if I have projects, if I have things that I'm working on, I have to throw it on my calendar. Otherwise, my day is going to be gone. So we have certain sales meetings, we have dedicated trainings, I have one-on-ones with the team. I also do team meetings just for I have SDRs and I call them ADRs outside of just the sales organization. So there are some repeat weekly meetings, but on top of that, we do honor no meeting Fridays. So that's where I'm excited to speak with you today because my calendar was free and we're recording on a Friday here. But, I really just try to be that manager where if you need me every single day, you have my time, I will find it. But there's also some days I don't even talk to my reps. I'm very big on building trust. So that's why sometimes my days and weeks really can vary and be different. But I do admit my calendar gets so packed that I do overwhelm myself a little bit. So I do need to be a little bit better with time management because, again, being a leader and just doing a lot of projects, especially at a startup, I get pulled in many directions, which I honestly love. I just do notice sometimes I'm like, sheesh, I'm booked 9:30 to 5:30. I need to be kind to myself and remember I need to book my breaks too. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but I guess the best advice I could give is structure your calendar and stick to it. Try not to break it because there's a lot to do, but all in good fun.
What I want to cover here, it's you mentioned you want to put your team first. So let's talk maybe for the team what you're doing on a weekly basis, and then individually what's your routine with them. So do you have weekly trainings with them, or what's your structure with your team?
So, what I do is, well, across our entire sales organization, we do a sales specific training on, we lead that on Mondays. So, it might be very relevant to my team, but maybe it's more relevant to closers or account management. Either way, there's always value because for the most part, SDRs, ADRs, they do want to get promoted into those other sales roles. So it could be a product training, really a vast, range of topics there. And then I have weekly one-on-ones. So that's my dedicated time. I do have things to go over. We'll go over their KPIs, their metrics. I want to track how are calls going, how are emails going, and I do compare those top performers to bottom performers to see where's the gap. I have a green, yellow, red method. So, red is okay, let's figure out to get that to yellow and all yellows to green. But I do compare, but we have a very good camaraderie and playfulness within the group that it's never tense. It's genuinely like, I'm in the red. Let me speak to, my colleague here who's in the green. What's going on? So I like to facilitate that, but I also really encourage, I know this sounds corny, but we are a family. So my reps, I don't even have to get involved sometimes. They'll just be proactive and then they'll just come to me and say, listen, I really appreciate everything that's going on, but so and so helped me. And look, now I bumped up 5% in this conversion metric. So I really just try to stay on top of that. And then I also do biweekly huddles because I noticed in hindsight, it's 2020, right? Hindsight is 2020. I would have these sessions and always start these meetings with updates. And I'm like, shoot, we had 30 minutes. I spent 15 minutes talking about updates. So that's why I keep myself honest and I will do bi weekly huddles where I'm like, okay, these are the updates I have unrelated to any other meetings. So, if you guys have something to say, this is what I have to say. And it's just kind of like the breakfast table of us all chatting. And then what I used to do, so I'll speak with things that I've changed. I used to do weekly role plays, but I've actually shifted. So instead of role plays, we now have 1 hour a week on Tuesday mornings where my team, everybody has to bring a call and then we'll listen to it together and then we all give feedback. And what I love about this is, you know, I'm not on the phone the way my reps are. I can speak from experience as their leader, but people who are actually, having the same conversations, they can jump in and help and be like, I got that objection. It was really tough. I said this and I got the meeting. And then, I'll jump into with slow down, active listening, and, we all just participate there. So that's partially how I run my week and I'm just there for them. And again, just outside of any other time that they need me.
You moved from, so you were doing weekly role plays, and then you moved to collabs. I was calling that collabs, but that's what you did.
Yes, and the reason I chose to do that is I feel that role plays are most beneficial that I've noticed for new hires, people who are getting used to the script and the talk track. But as I did it and my reps were pretty seasoned, I was like, we're having the same thing. We're booking the meeting every time. And I just noticed there wasn't as much of a challenge because it wasn't a real live conversation. So now I just do the role plays with, unless something changes and we have, a change in the script, but I really focus on role plays with, the new hires for the first couple weeks to months. And the call recordings have been most beneficial because it's not us faking a conversation, it's an actual conversation. And I'm also big on encouraging my team, bring the bad calls, bring the ugly calls. I am not somebody who's going to be like, oh, that was horrible. Like, no, we can't learn if it's a perfect call every single time. Yes, that's fantastic, and maybe somebody else could learn, but I want to give advice to the actual person who made that phone call. So we really do have a really good environment of just trust and loyalty that, we just get vulnerable. And that's what I like because it just helps us get better.
And on those, actually, what we were doing with the team, it was we tried to have like good calls and bad calls, but even though the bad calls, we are looking for the good things that they were doing, because sometimes, obviously, on the bad call, it's not you did everything you could, and that was just maybe the wrong person, maybe the wrong timing to call the person. But the goal was not to only look for the bad things, but yes, they were looking for the positive things on the call, but then starting to give some tips on how they could handle the situation.
And I love that you said that because one of my mantras is remember what you can control and what you can't control. You can control your dials, your activity, but you can't control if the person on the other line is just going to be nasty. And that's where some of the tougher phone calls that we've had, it's you can't control what they said. You can't control that they're mean, if they hang up on you, if they belittle you. And it happens. That's the name of the game, right? When you cold call, you need thick skin. Sometimes people are not kind. You cannot control that. So I've noticed when my reps kind of feel down in the dumps and they're like, "Oh, this was tough." This is an opportunity to use this really bad call to be like, "Listen, that's not your fault. I hate to say it, it's them, it's not you." So that's kind of that refreshing moment of screw that call, clear the slate, let's start over. Don't beat yourself up.
And just to go back on what you said earlier, also for people who are listening, what's you are talking about the metrics. So you have the three colors: red, yellow, and green. And do you have like any? So you are saying you are comparing them to the top performers, but do you have like specific KPIs for everyone, or how do you manage that?
So I have certain KPIs and metrics for the inbound team that are of course going to be different from the outbound team because they're different jobs and there's different quality. So I track call volume, email volume, also all of the total connects. How many call connections did you know? How many people did you speak with? How many emails were replied to? Where are your meetings coming from? So I have them list every time was the meeting booked via a call. I also include Zoom meetings as well, since that's a conversation, or was it booked through an email? So that way I can see where is that strength, but also is maybe somebody favoring one channel over the other. So even if maybe they're really good at email, but they're not as much on phone. Maybe that's where I'll jump in and say, let's role play this because I want to make sure that you feel confident in both scenarios. And then I dive in further. Excuse me. How many of those call connections are actually leading to a meeting? How many of those meetings are actually showing? How many of your emails that you're sending? How many opens are you getting? How many replies? How many replies to demo? So that way we can really dive in and see because we use sequences. So some of the messaging is going to be similar, but there's also a lot of one-offs. So that's a good opportunity to dive in. Is your list maybe different than somebody else's? Is it a quality list or is there just a way that we can look at somebody who is in the green and try to help you if you're maybe in that yellow or red scenario? So yeah, it's a lot to look at, but I would be lost without it because that's what you need. You need the data, and I feel like so many people aren't using it. So that's just some of what I'm tracking.
Maybe let's just focus on your outbound SDRs. So what's the ADR? Sorry, you said you call them
Okay.
ADR.
Yes.
What's the red, yellow, and green for them? Let's talk about calls and emails, for example.
So they are going to be very specific to my team. And what I've noticed is I feel like so many people they think it's a one size fits all and it's not. I should probably know this all off the top of my head, but I'd have to check because I use conditional formatting. So every single one has a different red, yellow, and green. But I would love to have 100 phone calls per day. So that's a minimum of 500 activities per week. And then that's just on that phone call. So especially on top of emails, those numbers, some of my reps on a good week they could hit 2,000 activities. They're just machines. I love them. They're go-getters. But if I were to throw out a little bit more of generic terms, I would say really good metrics that you want to strive for are if you're making 100 phone calls, you want to have at least 10% connections. So 10 conversations. And of those 10 conversations, at least 10% turn into a meeting, which is at least one. So what that means is if you're making 100 calls per day, you should be booking at least one meeting. And I'll own, our metrics are a little bit beneath that because we weren't hitting them just yet. And to be fair, I completely revamped our outbound in January. So that's why I wanted to be conservative. So that way we weren't all in this bright red. But as we have more of that baseline, that's where we'll have more consistency. So we just have to keep looking at it because that's like I said, it's not one size fits all with the data, and sometimes I feel like people do, and then you're just chasing this goal that might not be right for you, your product, and your target. So that's just my little PSA there. Focus on your true stats.
Now that I've seen that you have been at RocketReach for more than 1 year now, what's your what's your tips for people who are listening to build a team from scratch? And we can, if you want, how we can figure out that it's okay, what you will do in month one, what you will do in month two and month three, for example.
When you're an SDR leader, you're always building. I had 10 promotions last year alone, which meant all I was doing was replacing people who got promoted off my team. It's a beautiful thing, but the recruitment in the building, it really never ends. So it's a really good thing, but you have to stay on your toes. So Rocket Reach is actually the third opportunity that I've had where I have had the opportunity to build a team from scratch. So you have to be very intentional about who you're bringing on, because you need to, and you also need to be transparent. You need to let these reps know we're building this team. We, like at Rocket Reach, we didn't have a sales team before I got brought on. So I didn't have last year's numbers to look at. I didn't even have last month's numbers to look at. So I need somebody who can go with the flow. They understand that things are going to change pretty often and pretty quickly. So feedback is so important, because as much as my feedback matters, so do my reps. They're on that front line. So you really need that coachable, trainable, team player, positive mindset. So that way somebody doesn't feel defeated if perhaps they can't keep up with just the changes. If somebody said, that sounds tough, they might need to go to a more seasoned team where they've had their processes in place for years. But again, if you're building from scratch, you're not going to have that. So again, you have to be very intentional and also test everything. A B test what messaging works. What are your customers engaging with? What are they not engaging with? You know, don't be too robotic. I feel like sometimes people are like, just send the email and, don't be that human element. No, just be a person connecting with that person. And then that's where you're going to get that true feedback for what's working and what's not. So, I mean, I don't know if you had any other specific questions, because I feel like there's so much about building a new
Yeah,
team, but
no,
you
it's
need the right people.
so you're focusing right now on, and I know that's something we were going to cover, the um, hiring the right people. So in your month one, the first thing you will do is thinking about your first hires.
So, the way I structure onboarding and training when I do bring a rep on, so I always joke the first week is crazy. You're not going to remember it. It's your HR paperwork, your direct deposit, health insurance. You're going to meet a lot of our heads of departments, and you get to know a lot of people here at Rocket Reach, but your head's spinning. You're excited, it's a new job. So I always say it's fine. So what I do is I book 1 hour with every single new hire their second week. So on top of the training sessions that our onboarding coordinator has scheduled, I'm like, let's be real. Like, it's fine if you don't remember things. Everybody learns differently. What do you want to cover? I give them a dedicated hour of, they want to talk about one thing, that's fine. If you want to cover a little bit of everything, that's fine. I truly cater and try it my best just to bend backwards. What does this individual need? Because some people are visual learners. Some people want a meeting. Some people, you can just throw paperwork at them, they read it and they have it. So I really just try to dig as deep as I can. Like, are you sure that makes sense? I promise it's okay if you have questions, because I want my reps to know. I would rather you come to me 10 times with the same question to make sure it sticks than for anybody to ever feel embarrassed. They're still confused about this Salesforce button, but they know they've asked me and they don't want to ask again. Like, I don't do that. I try to just be as laid back as I can to make sure that I'm accommodating their needs. So that's what week 2 looks like, is really, let's crunch and get through this. And that's where I also start my one-on-one role plays. Because at this point, things click. They know who we sell to, our talk track, and it's just practice. So by week 3 is when I get them on the phones. And I do that intentionally. I know some leaders, they actually get their reps on the phone day 1. And I'm like, that sounds petrifying. I would never want to do that. So that's where I feel, excuse me, for my team, week 3 has worked best. And I was also an SDR for years. I did the job. So that's where I feel that I'm able to lead with a strong mindset, because I've been in their shoes. So yeah, week 3 is on the phone. And then I would say it's just practicing from there. I would say there's a bit more hand holding as you get into that second month, because people just want to make sure, are they using outreach right? Is gong or is their recordings going in? Are, Salesforce, did they convert the op correctly? So a lot of it's just encouragement. Like, you did a great job. Like, you don't even need to come to me. So I'm very big on motivation and positive just affirmations. And then I would say by month 3, at that point is when, if I needed to go on vacation and be out of the office, they're fine. They don't need me, They're good on their own. And something I failed to mention, we call them onboarding buddies, but it's really more of a mentor. So I'll pick somebody for whichever team of mine they're joining, and I pair them with somebody who is pretty seasoned, and they just have, a really good head on their shoulders to help. So outside of me, I pair them with somebody that can also help just with training and anything else that they might need. So a lot of hands-on the first couple months.
No, but that's a very good point what you just mentioned about having like a buddy or a mentor inside the company. So that's when I know at Chili Pepper that's what we were doing since the beginning. When I joined, I had a buddy for the first month, and then I was the buddy of maybe 5 or 6 hires after that. And it was super interesting because yes, you have the manager helping you in the role and coaching you and training you, but also you have the people who are also on the field and give you what's working, what's not working, and it's also different. And I think uh, because obviously as a manager, because then obviously when I moved to leadership is uh, I think it's more valuable to have them asking certain type of questions with the reps who are still prospecting than asking me all the questions, because sometimes it's not that I don't know, but prospecting right now in this current market, I think it will be different than prospecting 2 or 3 years ago. So I think the reps on the field right now, they are more the best one to answer those questions.
And not for nothing, they could talk about me. I always say, I'm like, ask my reps if you want to know more about me. I'll talk about myself all day, but I'm like, talk to people that I've managed. I've had some people on my team, I've had them for a year. If you want a true sense of my management style, use your buddy. Ask how, can I go for like, I mean, it should all hopefully be positive, but talk about me. And also, like I mentioned when you asked about how I own my day, sometimes I'm so busy that I might have a bit of a delay, and so the onboarding buddy, they can get to them quicker because I do block off once they sign that offer. I block my calendar for those first 3 weeks. So by week 4 is usually when I get packed with things that aren't those onboarding sessions. So I have to, just really encourage that relationship.
No, and that's a good point because yeah, you just mentioned that something I was obviously, because I know some people, some friends who are SDR leaders also, they try to be really available all the time, and I say it's not that I don't want to do that, but I want to have them also being how do you say that, find the answers on their own. They don't need to have me to be live or to be answering all the questions they have right now, because sometimes the question they have, maybe it's already, for example, we are using Guru for the a playbook and everything. So the answer is already on Guru. So you don't need to ask to manage, but that interesting. So also what you mentioned about having your team calling on week 3, I think it's interesting because like you mentioned, calling on day 1, maybe it's really quick to do that because if you're selling like a complex product or to a new industry, like I'm going to do right now, it's you need to learn more about the industry, your buyer personas first before calling them. Obviously, practice helps, but you want to also have like a good conversation with your prospect, even though you're not an expert on the product generally. But yeah, I like that to start calling on week 3 because normally you have enough onboarding, enough knowledge to call your prospects. Now I know also you were saying that now with because you said that's your third role and where you're building a team from scratch. Something you told me that you think you improved a lot is hiring. And I want to talk about that because I think hiring for the success of a team, it's I think the best thing you can focus on more than anything else. What when did you realize that hiring was the best thing? Because for me, it was in 2022 actually. Before that, it was not. So, what happened for you when you realized that?
So besides the fact that due to unfortunate layoffs, their applications just go through the roof, I learned so much last year because when I was an early manager, I wanted to hire everybody. It was really hard for me to tell people no. And I probably passed through like second, third round interviews, and they're like, geez, like Jill, like they're not a fit. But I'm like, oh, but they were cool. Like they could learn. So I don't even like this analogy, but I'll say, like, I saw everybody like this puppy that I just wanted to adopt, and I'm going to be that protector for you and give you the opportunity I know you deserve. But then I realized I saw that in everyone. And it was hard for me, like I said, to really just to reject people. So I knew this. I recognized that I was struggling, and it was hard for me to identify a top candidate from the bottom because I'm like, I can train them. And I put it on me, not on them. I was like, I can do this. But I needed to flip and be like, no, like, can they do this? So that mindset shift happened, I would say in 2022, but I was intentional about it. I went to our head of recruitment, like our head of people, and she's amazing at recruiting. So she gave me resources. I had conversations with her, and we really focused on some of the psychological approach too, where ask these questions and see how they answer. So not even that the answer matters, but I was better able to identify, are they bashing their previous manager? Are they bashing their company? Are they blaming them? No, like you have to take ownership. Even if you failed, everybody does. Don't sit there and try to act so perfect. So I was able to notice certain triggers that I was like, you know what, you're not going to be coachable, or, you're going to be very coachable. So that's what really helped me is I found people that, again, they were just better at it than I was. And, you know, I don't need those conversations anymore. But again, even just to take a step back, it's tough now. Like if I open up an SDR role, geez, I would say not my last opening, the opening before, I had 300 applicants in I think 30 hours. I was overwhelmed. And even what I found myself noticing was everybody looks the same. So that's also another challenge. But I was like, no, who sticks out? So that's what I was doing is I was like, who's actually trying to stand out amongst the crowd? And that's what helped me start those phone screens is I don't want somebody like everybody else. Like I want somebody who's a bit more unique. And I probably never would have thought that way. And I would have been like, here's that generic person. Let me interview everyone. I probably would have interviewed 100 people and then had the same conversation rather than that rock star that just they were a bit more bold and stood out.
And right now, so I know from your perspective, hiring you can be picky right now with your candidates because now you have more candidates. So that's I think for hiring it's a good thing. For candidates, it raises the bar. You need to think about how you can stand out. So from your perspective, what question do you like to ask during interviews? So I was reading one of your posts that you shared, I think it was yesterday, but you are saying that, for example, if you have an SDR who are trying to move to another company, but if you want to work with you, for example, who is already an SDR, one question you ask is, say, why being an SDR again? So why are you asking this question and what do you want to uncover, for example?
I always love to ask that. Yes. If you have previous SDR experience, why do you still want to be an SDR? And I don't want to say this is a trick question, but I'll give out my secrets here because I hate when people feel like, oh, you can only be an SDR for 12 months. Otherwise, like you have to get promoted. I was an SDR for years. That was my path. I never wanted to be anything other than an SDR because I knew leadership was my journey. So if somebody even said, like, I love this role, I'd be like, awesome. Where some people might reject them then and there and think, oh, well, you're not striving for more. So that's where my mindset is so different with this question. But I also do like to vet out those who do want to be AEs and just be transparent about the process because, given the economy, our team personally, it's not growing as much as we thought it would. We're not doing any layoffs, which we're so fortunate with, but we have the positions we have. We're not foreseeing us doubling, say, our AE roles because we have enough going on right now. But sometimes reps get antsy. And I learned this lesson because I had a top rep quit. This individual, I I interviewed him. He was a top performer. He was great, and I always say have expectations 12 months in the role. If you want to be an AE, my job is to help get you there. I just want to be real. I need you to really, be on this team for a bit and we'll take it from there. And I would say probably 3 months in, they were antsy to be an AE. And then I would say by 6 months, it became an obsession where I was like, whoa, like what happened? I thought we had been so transparent. And, he ended up leaving because he was like, oh, well, somebody else says that in 6 months I'll be an AE. If you can't give me a specific timeline, I'm out. And it stinks. I lost a top performer. And we still keep in touch. Like, he's a great guy. I wish him nothing but the best. But that was my learning. So, through this question, if you want to be an AE, are you okay to be an SDR for a long enough time without quitting or without just being frustrated because I don't want that for them just as much as they don't want it for themselves. So that's why I like to ask.
What's interesting with this is I was talking about this on another podcast, not maybe just right now, but also when it's maybe easier to find a job, you should focus more on finding the right company instead of just focusing for the role, for example. If you think about this way, but yes, like you mentioned, right now you maybe don't have any AE promotion that's going to happen in the next 3 or 6 months, but maybe in a year. And but if you really believe in the company, you know that's going to come, and you prefer to be at the right company. So I'm mentioning that because that's something I was talking a lot with my reps at Chili Piper. So I think you should focus more on, are you in the right company? Yes, sometimes the promotion will come maybe later that you're expecting, but are you happy with your situation, happy with how we are treating or training you, coaching you? Yes, because what happened is I have some reps also who left Chili Pepper, and then a few months after they were saying, hey, I don't know why I left. And they
Yeah, the
were.
grass is not always greener.
Exactly, and I think that's why you need to think also about the company. Are you working with a manager that's taking care of you or stuff like that? Instead of just saying, "Oh yeah, I want to be an AE," and then move to the AE role, and then figure out that maybe that's. But I don't know. But the point is that. So, what kind of other question do you like to ask to candidates on top of what we just talked about?
So I always do the first rounds, which I know is a little backwards. Sometimes people have the recruiters do it, but I actually start every interview by saying I am unlike probably any interview that you've ever had because I am myself. I'm goofy. I might tell a joke. I'm probably gonna curse. I am who I am. I'm going to speak to a potential like a candidate the same way I speak to my reps in one-on-one. I feel that it's really important that I'm the right fit for them just as much as they are a right fit for me. It goes both ways. So, they should be interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing them. So I always say that. I'm like, put your guard down. You know, I feel bad when people show up in suits to these Zooms. I'm like, I'm in like a dry fit shirt. Like, let's just be super casual because that's the type of culture that we have. We're very low ego, collaborative, and fun. I hate when interviews are so stuffy that you're not yourself. You have your guard up. So I get their guard down immediately. And then I always start, walk me through your resume. And I say, let's be brief because sometimes candidates, they'll spend 30 minutes telling me. No, I just want to see if you can sell yourself. Are you able to clearly articulate your experience and the skills for why you think that you are a fit to join my team? So that's a big thing. Can you tell me about you? Because if you can't speak about yourself, how are you going to speak about a product? Nobody knows you better than you. So that's one of my questions. Again, I'll ask about, experience. Where do you want to be? Another question I ask is, I get a little corny. Like, if you have a magic wand and you could wave it, what's your perfect scenario for a company that you would accept a position with? So this is where I get unique answers where they can be like, well, my last company, I hated this and I hated that. And I'm like, whoa, like, let's not bash. But, even let's go deep, like 401k, health insurance, um, what's important. I need to make sure that we have everything offered to you because maybe we don't. Like I know some companies, they don't even give you a laptop and you have to expense it, but you get reimbursed 90 days later. Maybe that's for some, but I wouldn't do that. So like let's get down to little nitty-gritties. But again, I'll speak to that and I also ask like have you done your homework? Do you know what RocketReach is? Do you know anything about me or the company? And I don't want a detailed book report. I just want to know, can you tell me what RocketReach does? Because this is where you failed when it's I pulled up your LinkedIn and and I'm like, no, I didn't tell you to read LinkedIn on the spot. I want you to just say, oh, you're a contact data provider. I've gotten some interesting answers to that from people who were not prepared. So I keep it pretty basic. I really don't want it to seem fake. It's very authentic and genuine. I just want to know, like, are you somebody that we can spend a lot of time together? Are you going to get along? Are you going to be coachable? And ironically enough, I find a lot of people with a lot of SDR experience, they're not the coachable ones. They'll come in and say, I did this, I did that, I'm amazing, I have the best process. So, like, I'm good, you don't have to train me. That's not what I want. Like, cool, I'm glad you're amazing, but what if my process is different? What if you poison the team because you don't want to do anything I say? I don't care if you'd be a top performer. Your attitude is, that's garbage. So I really just try to dive deep into are you just a good person who wants to join and have fun along the way?
When you're asking those questions, you just want to see how they are talking. Because, for example, you were talking about their previous experience, and you said sometimes they are bashing their or their former company. Do you like ask those questions to see how they are reacting, or giving you the answers, or what are you looking for?
So I want to look for, the truth in that. Like why, what made you apply to Rocket Reach? What made you, leave your last role? And sometimes it could be, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You could have hated your manager or your team or whatever, but you could just say something like, listen, I'm really striving for an opportunity where I have room to grow. I'm really looking to develop my skills so I can take it to the next level. Unfortunately, I just felt like I capped out at the training for where I'm at. So I have to do what's best for me to find an organization that really puts pride in supporting the team. And if you look at my LinkedIn, you have enough to go off of to know how much I love my team. So there's an easy way without much research to tie into, you seem like a manager I'd love to work for because you really do put your team above and beyond. And I just don't feel like I get that. That's a much nicer way of saying you hate your manager and they're not teaching you anything. So that's why I like to ask. And another thing I like to ask, a red flag I have noticed is a lot of people, like, they have their side hustle and get, I'm all for the side hustle. Make your money, work hard, but sometimes people come across so obsessed that I don't know that there's room for a full-time job in there. If your passion is the mobile app that you built or this company you did or you run an agency or whatever you do, first off, I think that's amazing, but if you are so obsessed, then guess what? If that's your baby that you've invested into, RocketReach will always be second. And since we are still in that startup mode, like, I need A players. I need people who can give 110% 9 to 5, but I'm also big on leave at 5. You don't need to work until 8. I feel that if you show up and you do your job, you leave. I'm not telling you, like, we work 40 hours per week. I do not, overwork people. I don't want you to burn out. I just need to make sure that we're not number 2. I need somebody who's going to make us number 1.
For the research, for example, when they ask, for you ask question about what do you know about RocketReach or about you, for example, if they don't know anything about you or didn't do any research, is it a red flag for you?
Yes, I've had people say, "Oh, I don't know what you do at all. I just really want to be an SDR. I really want to break into SaaS," or I got referred, so like they just told me to apply because this seems cool. And I'm like, "Oh, geez, like, I mean, I appreciate that you're being honest, but," and even if you botch it, because sometimes I can tell people tried, but maybe they're just, this is their first couple interviews. Maybe they're nervous and they're hitting certain words that are relevant, but maybe they missed it. That's okay too. I just want to know that you at least tried, because there have been interviews where they don't have the slightest clue. And I've actually had interviews where there was this one person, they called us rocket fuel the entire time. And I didn't want to correct them, but I'm like, you said our name wrong so many times and you kept saying it. If you're not sure, just don't say it. So that's where I just felt like I'm just one interview among a sea of 1,000 others, and you want a job, but you don't want it to be, you don't really care where it is. And that's what can be tough with people looking for so many jobs. You still have to be in it and unique to that company, and you can't treat them all generically because otherwise it stands out. And guess what? I have 300 other applicants who maybe did a better job.
And what advice would you give to a smart and driven new SDR manager?
Something that I have learned the past year is understand your data. This wasn't a thing when I was an SDR. I never had a manager look into my calls volume. I never had a sequencing tool. It's so funny because I used to have Salesforce Classic and a desk phone, and I didn't think it got better than that. I didn't have anybody telling me when to call, when to email. Everything was in my head, and I just was a machine. So that's where data, we probably weren't even tracking it. So that's where one of my struggles, which I have gotten so much better in the last 6 months, is like I was saying with my KPI sheet, understanding leading and lagging indicators. If my, VP of sales or CEO says, "Why is your team doing well? Tell me." I need to tell you specifically why. Or, "Hey, numbers seem a bit low. Why?" If you're not tracking what your team is doing, you're going to sit there, you're not going to know, and you're probably going to BS an answer. So that's where you need to have data telling your story, because before I used data, my coaching was subjective. Like, "Oh, you're doing great." Like, it was just opinion based. Whereas, I can think somebody's wonderful, but if I look and say, "Listen, you're making a lot of call connections. None of them are leading to meetings. Like, are you struggling with some objections? Why don't we listen to some calls together?" "Oh, I see. Okay. You're really getting hung up on price. I'm glad we were able to figure that out. How do you think you could have handled this better?" If I didn't have my tracking sheet, how would I know? So that's my best advice. And do it early, do it often. And if you don't know, find somebody who can help you. I admit that's what I do. If I don't know something, I'll go to resources like Rev Genius. It's free. Go to Pavilion. It is paid. Go to LinkedIn. There's so many ways that people want to help. And you would be surprised if you ask a question, how many people will be like, yes, I will give you my time for free. Utilize that, learn how people are doing it well, find what makes sense for you, and then just implement it. And also be kind to yourself. Don't try to do too much. Don't try to come in and be a hero and rip and replace everything. No, you're not a hero. You're going to look like you're you're rocking somebody's world. So observe, learn, and just take it step by step, day by day. And like I said, be kind to yourself. Nobody expects perfection. So if you mess up, that's fine. Just own it and come with a solution and just don't do it again. So, and that's not even just managers, that's everybody. I think we forget to be kind to ourselves and remember we're humans. Nobody is perfect. And if somebody says they're perfect, they are lying. We just have to try to get better at one thing every day, not 10.
And that's funny you are mentioning your focus was really to focus more on the data. That's something I started to do this year, for this 2022 actually, trying to be more focused on the data and trying to improve where you have the most impact. Because yes, you can improve everything obviously, but you want to focus on the one thing that you think will bring the most results. So that was interesting to do that, because now I'm more aware of everything, not just, like you said, you need to know your data, because if someone asks you, hey, why your team is good, if I'm having good results right now, you need to show them. So, and we are at the end of the episode, so I have one last question for you. So what question do you have for me?
I would say if I had a question for you, since I'm a manager and you just joined a new organization, when you were interviewing, what was the most important question that you asked your manager to make sure that you knew this was the job you wanted to accept? I'm just curious from your perspective.
Right now, with this market, I think the first question was more around the financial piece of the company, how they were thinking about spending money this year and the next year, because I think right now the companies needs to be really thinking a lot about that with all the layoff and everything. So I think that's super important for me, because the rest, I think it was more me looking for the external triggers I could find, the industry I was the company I was applying to, but then also the people on the team. So it was more talking to the team and seeing, do they have experience. It's not that they don't have experience, but it's more on the new role I have right now. A lot of people on the sales team, they have a lot of experience in the industry, so I think it's super interesting to know that. And for an early stage company, it's super useful, because you want to make sure that you have with people who have maybe more experience than you, and you can learn from them also. So the question, yeah, it was more focused on the financial piece.
No, I love that. Yeah, it's all about the people. People are always first. Again, and I agree with the financials, but you spend more time with your colleagues usually than your roommate or family. So you need them to be good people. So I love that you asked that. That's good.
And then also during the process, what I did, I had a call with um, an AE on the team who is not involved in the process, so trying to see also his thinking and what he liked about the company and what could be improved. And same, because for this company I got referred also, and this person also was really happy with everything. So I think it's, when you also have people who are helping you with this, I think it's super useful.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like that's such a way to break into a new company is who do you know, who can get you in, and also give you the real talk, the good, the bad, the ugly, so you know what you're getting yourself into. I love that.
Well, Jill, it was a real pleasure to have you on the show today. But before we end the episode, do you have anything else you want to add for the audience that you want to share?
To end it, I mean, I like to follow my passion, and what I've learned is one of my passions is paying it forward because sometimes it just takes one person, whether it's somebody you work with internally, family friend, an external person that you value, their opinion elsewhere. It takes one person to say, I believe in you, you can do this. And I had a few of those individuals in my life that I met a few years ago that have catapulted my career. So I want to do that for other people. So if anybody has questions, if you are an SDR, if you're a struggling manager, I might not have all the answers, but I can definitely speak you through it and maybe help you network the way that I did. So find me on LinkedIn. My name is just Jill Bruno. And also, I'll give you my email. It's very simple. It's Jillian, Jillian, at rocketreach.co. Seriously, reach out and I would love to, be that person for you.
I'll make sure to add everything in the show notes. So thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks everyone for listening, and I see you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me. This is great. This is fun.